The signal came at midnight, Earth Standard Time. It traveled across the cold emptiness of space for 17 days before it reached the sensors of the United Earth Fleet. The message was broken and weak, filled with static and fear, but every word was clear enough to understand. Please, anyone who can hear us. We are dying. Our world is burning. We have no weapons. We have no soldiers. We only know peace. Please. Our children are crying. Help us. Admiral Park Ji-ho stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dawn and listened to the message 3 times. He was 62 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. Behind him, his crew worked in silence. They had all heard the message. They all felt the weight of those desperate words. "Where did it come from?" Ji-ho asked. Lieutenant Cha Sara, a young woman with sharp eyes and quick hands, pulled up the data on her screen. "The Andara system, Admiral. It is home to a species called the Velori. Our records say they are a peaceful civilization. They have no military, no weapons of any kind. They are known for their art and their music." Ji-ho closed his eyes. He remembered the first time humanity had met the Velori just 15 years ago. They were beautiful creatures, tall and thin, with skin that seemed to glow like soft light. They had welcomed humans with open arms and gentle voices. They believed that all beings in the universe were good. "Who is attacking them?" Ji-ho asked. Sara's face grew dark. "The Kreeth Dominion." Everyone on the bridge knew that name. The Kreeth were one of the oldest and most cruel empires in the galaxy. They did not conquer worlds to rule them. They conquered worlds to destroy them. They took everything of value and left nothing behind but ash and bones. Other species feared them. Other species ran from them. Ji-ho opened his eyes. "Send the message to Fleet Command. Tell Commander Kim Hana that I am requesting permission to respond." The message reached Earth in 6 hours. It reached Fleet Commander Kim Hana as she sat in her office, looking out at the city of Seoul. She was a small woman with white hair and a voice that could silence a room. She had led humanity through the Seoul defense wars. She had never lost a battle. When she read Admiral Ji-ho's report, she did not hesitate. She called an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council. The council members gathered from across the planet. Some joined through hologram screens. Others sat in the Great Hall in Geneva. They listened as Kim Hana played the Velori distress signal for them. "They are asking for help," she said. "They have no one else to turn to. The other species in this sector have already refused. They are too afraid of the Kreeth." One council member, a man from the European Union, raised his hand. "Commander, the Velori are not our allies. We have no treaty with them. We have no obligation to help." Kim Hana looked at him with cold eyes. "A mother is holding her dying child and begging the universe for help. That is all the obligation I need." Another member spoke up. "The Kreeth are dangerous. We could lose ships. We could lose soldiers. Is it worth the risk?" Kim Hana stood up straight. 300 years ago, humans almost destroyed themselves in war. We burned our cities. We poisoned our air. We killed millions of our own people. And do you know what saved us? We remembered that we are stronger when we help each other. We remembered that protecting the weak is not a burden. It is an honor. She looked around the room at every face. "The Velori are crying in the darkness. They have no one. If we do not answer, no one will. And if we let them die, what does that make us? What kind of species watches innocent people burn and does nothing?" The vote was held. It was unanimous. Humanity would answer the call. Captain Yoon Do-hun received his orders aboard the destroyer Iron Will. He was 40 years old, with broad shoulders and a calm voice that his crew trusted completely. He had fought in 6 battles and had never failed his mission. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Cha Sara, stood beside him as he read the orders. "Liberation Operation," Do-hun said quietly. "We are going to free the Velori homeworld from the Kreeth." Sara nodded. "The fleet is assembling now. 47 warships, 200,000 soldiers. Admiral Jiho will lead the attack from the eternal dawn. Dohun looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, a peaceful world was burning. Gentle beings who had never held a weapon were watching their homes turn to dust. Children who had never known fear were learning it for the first time. "Tell the crew to prepare," Dohun said. "We leave in 6 hours." The iron will hummed with activity. Soldiers checked their weapons. Engineers tested the engines. Medical officers prepared their supplies. Everyone knew this would not be an easy fight. The Kreeth were powerful and cruel. They had destroyed dozens of civilizations over thousands of years. But the humans were not afraid. Sergeant Lee Junho gathered his squad in the barracks. He was a big man with strong hands and a gentle heart. His soldiers were young, some of them only 20 years old. They looked at him with nervous eyes. "I know you are scared," Junho said. "That is okay. Fear keeps you alive, but I want you to remember something. Out there right now there are people who cannot fight for themselves. They have no armor, they have no guns, they have nothing but hope, and we are that hope." He looked at each of them. "When we land on that planet, you will see terrible things. You will see death and destruction, but you will also see the faces of the people we are saving. And I promise you, when a mother holds her child and thanks you for coming, you will know that everything we do is worth it." Private Shin Nari, the youngest soldier in the squad, raised her hand. "Sergeant, why are we doing this? The Velori are not human. They are not our family." Junho smiled sadly. "Because they asked for help, and because we are human. That is what we do. When someone cries, we answer. When someone falls, we lift them up. It does not matter if they look like us or speak like us. Pain is the same in every language. Fear is the same on every world." The fleet launched from the stations around Earth. 47 ships moved through the darkness of space like a wave of steel and fire. At the front was the eternal dawn, with Admiral Park Jiho standing on the bridge. Behind him came the Iron Will, the Hammer of Saul, the Rising Star, and dozens more. They traveled for 11 days. When they finally reached the Andara system, they saw what the Kreeth had done. The Velori homeworld, Andareth, hung in space like a wounded jewel. Its surface was covered in smoke and fire. Great cities that had stood for thousands of years were now piles of rubble. The oceans were dark with ash. And in orbit above the planet, like vultures waiting for their prey to die, floated the warships of the Kreeth Dominion. Admiral Jiho looked at the destruction and felt anger rising in his chest. He had seen war before. He had seen death and suffering, but this was not war. This was slaughter. He opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Park Jiho. What you see before you is an innocent world being murdered by monsters. The Velori did nothing wrong. They only wanted to live in peace. Today, we will show them that peace has a protector. Today, we will show the Kreeth what happens when they attack the helpless." He paused. "Prepare for battle, we have a promise to keep." The Kreeth warships numbered 37. They hung in orbit above the dying world of Andareth like a crown of death. Their hulls were black as night, covered in sharp edges and weapons that glowed with cruel red light. For 3 weeks, they had been burning the planet below. For 3 weeks, they had been killing everything that moved. When the human fleet appeared at the edge of the system, the Kreeth commander was confused. He sat on his throne aboard the flagship Bloodfang and watched the strange ships approach. His name was Drexen, and he had never lost a battle in 200 years. "What are these creatures?" he asked his officers. "They are called humans," one officer replied. "A young species from the Sol system. They only joined the galactic community recently. They are considered primitive and emotional." Drexen laughed. It was a cold, ugly sound. "Primitive, and they dare come here, send them a message, tell them to leave or die." The message was sent across all channels. Every human ship received it at the same time. "Leave now, humans. This is not your affair. Interfere and you will share the fate of these pathetic Velori. You have one chance. Take it." Admiral Park Jiho stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn and listened to the threat. Around him, his crew waited in tense silence. On the screens, they could see the burning cities of Andoreth. They could see the bodies floating in the dark waters. They could see the Kreeth ships firing their weapons at targets that could not fight back. Jiho felt something hot in his chest. It was not fear, it was fury. He opened a channel so every Kreeth ship could hear his voice. He spoke two words that would echo through history. Open fire. The human fleet moved as one. 47 ships surged forward, their engines burning bright. The Kreeth were surprised. Other species always tried to negotiate. Other species always hesitated. These humans did neither. Captain Yoon Dohun stood at the helm of the Iron Will and felt his ship shake as it accelerated toward the enemy. His crew shouted commands and confirmations around him. Alarms rang. Lights flashed, but Dohun was calm. All weapons online, Lieutenant Cha Sora reported. Shields at maximum. The Kreeth flagship is directly ahead. Good, Dohun said. We go straight through. Sora looked at him with wide eyes. Sir, if we charge directly into their formation, we will take heavy damage. Dohun smiled grimly. They expect us to stay at long range. They expect us to fight the way other species fight, slow and careful and afraid. He gripped the edge of his chair. We are not other species. The Iron Will slammed into the Kreeth formation like a fist. Its shields took hit after hit, but it kept moving. Dohun brought his ship alongside a Kreeth cruiser, so close that their hulls almost touched. At that range, there was no time to dodge. There was no room to run. Fire everything, Dohun ordered. The Iron Will unleashed all its weapons at once. Missiles exploded against the Kreeth hull. Energy beams cut through metal and flesh. The cruiser tried to turn, tried to escape, but it was too late. Its reactor exploded in a ball of white fire, and the ship broke apart like a toy. Across the battle, the same scene repeated itself again and again. Human ships did not fight with caution. They fought with controlled rage. They closed the distance and struck hard, accepting damage to deal more damage in return. The Kreeth had never seen anything like it. They were used to enemies who ran. They were used to enemies who surrendered. These humans did neither. These humans kept coming, even when their ships were burning, even when their shields were failing. Admiral Jiho coordinated the battle from the Eternal Dawn. He watched the tactical display and gave orders with a steady voice. Wolf Squadron, target their supply ships. Tiger Squadron, cut off their retreat. All assault teams, prepare for ground deployment. Lieutenant Cha Sora, who had transferred to the Admiral's command staff, worked her controls with fierce concentration. Her fighter wings swept through the battle like angry wasps, dodging between the larger ships and striking at weak points. Within 2 hours, the Kreeth orbital fleet was broken. 18 of their 37 ships were destroyed. The rest were damaged and retreating, but Jiho did not celebrate. He looked down at the planet below and saw that the killing continued. Send the dropships, he ordered. Our people need to reach the surface. Hundreds of small ships descended through the smoke and fire. They carried soldiers in heavy armor, armed with rifles and determination. Sergeant Lee Junho was on the first ship to land. The capital city of Andoreth was in ruins. Buildings that had once been beautiful towers of crystal and light were now piles of broken stone. The streets were filled with debris and ash, and everywhere there were bodies. Junho led his squad through the destruction with a heavy heart. These Velori had never hurt anyone. They had spent their lives making music and art and beauty, and now they lay dead in their own streets, killed for no reason except cruelty. Movement ahead, Private Shin Nari reported. Multiple contacts hiding in that collapsed structure. Junho raised his hand, signaling his squad to stop. They approached the ruins carefully, weapons ready. The structure had once been a school. Now it was barely standing. Inside, huddled in the shadows, were Velori survivors. There were about 20 of them, mostly children. Their translucent skin was covered in dust and blood. Their large eyes were filled with terror. When they saw the human soldiers, they tried to run deeper into the ruins. "Wait," Junho said softly. He lowered his weapon and removed his helmet. "We are not here to hurt you. We heard your call. We came to help." The Velori stopped. They stared at him with confusion and fear. An elder, an old female with cracks in her glowing skin, stepped forward slowly. "You came?" she asked in broken standard language. "You heard us?" Junho knelt down so he was at her level. He looked into her eyes with all the sincerity he could show. "Yes, we heard you, and we will never leave you alone again." The elder began to cry. It was a strange sound, like wind chimes in a storm. She reached out and touched Junho's face with her long, delicate fingers. We thought no one cared. We thought the universe would let us die." "Not while we are in it," Junho said. More human soldiers arrived, securing the area and setting up medical stations. Medical officer Han Minji worked without rest, treating wounded Velori with gentle hands. She did not know much about their biology, but she learned quickly. Pain was pain in any species. Injury was injury. She did what she could. The battle for the planet continued through the day and into the night. Kreeth ground forces fought hard, but they were pushed back step by step. Human tanks rolled through the ruined streets. Human aircraft filled the sky. Human boots marched forward, never stopping, never retreating. On the eternal dawn, Admiral Jiho received reports from across the planet. The situation was improving, but it was not over. The Kreeth still held the eastern continent. And worse, his sensors had detected something troubling. "Admiral," Sara said with a worried voice, "we are detecting a large energy signature at the edge of the system. It looks like more ships, many more ships." Jiho's jaw tightened. "How many?" Sara checked her data twice before answering. "Approximately 100 warships. They are Kreeth reinforcements. Estimated arrival time, 72 hours. 100 ships, almost 3 times what they had faced in the first battle." Jiho looked at his fleet status. They had lost 8 ships. Many more were damaged. They did not have the strength to fight another battle of that size. But he looked down at the planet below. He saw the fires that still burned. He thought of the Velori children hiding in the ruins, depending on humans they had never met to save their lives. "Recall all fighters for emergency repairs," he ordered. "Begin fortifying our orbital position, and send a message to Earth. Tell them what is coming. Tell them we need reinforcements." He paused and looked out at the stars. "And tell them we are not leaving, no matter what." Down on the surface, Sergeant Lee Junho helped a young Velori child to her feet. She was small, barely as tall as his waist, with bright blue skin and eyes that sparkled like stars. She held onto his hand and would not let go. "Are you a soldier?" she asked in her soft voice. "Yes," Junho said. "Do soldiers always fight?" Junho thought about the question. "We fight when we have to, when someone needs to be protected, when someone cannot protect themselves." The child looked at the destruction around them. "Why did the bad ones hurt us? We never hurt them." Junho felt his heart break a little. He had no good answer for that question. There was no good answer. Some beings in the universe were simply cruel. They enjoyed causing pain. They saw kindness as weakness and gentleness as something to destroy. But he knew something else too. He knew that for every cruel creature in the universe, there were good ones who would stand against them, and he was proud to be one of them. "I do not know why they hurt you," he said honestly, "but I know this, they will not hurt you anymore. We will not let them." The child looked up at him with trusting eyes. "Promise." Junho squeezed her hand gently. "Promise." The Kreeth reinforcements arrived on the 3rd day. 100 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Andara system, their black hulls blotting out the stars. At their center was a ship larger than any other, a massive vessel called the World Crusher, and aboard that vessel sat warlord Drexen the Unbroken. Drexen had heard about the defeat of his advance fleet. He had heard how the primitive humans had charged into battle without fear. He had heard how his ships had been torn apart by their strange, aggressive tactics, and he was furious. "These insects dare to challenge the Kreeth Dominion," he growled at his officers. "They dare to interfere with our harvest. I will crush them myself. I will make an example of them that the galaxy will never forget." Admiral Park Jiho watched the enemy fleet approach on his tactical display. His face was calm, but his heart was heavy. They were outnumbered 3-1. His ships were damaged from the first battle. His crews were exhausted. But he would not run. He could not run. Down on the planet below, hundreds of thousands of Velori civilians were still being evacuated to safe zones. If the fleet retreated, those people would die. "All ships form defensive formation around the planet," Jiho ordered. "We hold the line, no matter what comes." The battle began at dawn, planet time. The Kreeth attacked in waves, trying to overwhelm the human defenses with sheer numbers. Their weapons filled the space between the fleets with fire and death. The eternal dawn shook with every impact. Chief Engineer Beak Yuri ran through the corridors, shouting orders to her repair teams. The ship was bleeding air from a dozen holes. The starboard engine was failing. Half the power systems were offline. But Yuri refused to give up. She was a small woman with strong arms and an iron will. She had served on starships for 20 years. She knew every bolt and wire of the eternal dawn like she knew her own heart. "Reroute power from the secondary grid," she shouted to her team. "Seal those hull breaches with emergency foam, and somebody get me a welding torch. We are not losing this ship today." Her team worked through fire and smoke. They patched holes while explosions shook the deck beneath them. They replaced burned-out circuits while alarms screamed in their ears. They did the impossible again and again. On the medical decks, Medical Officer Han Minji faced her own battle. The wounded arrived in waves, humans and Velori alike. Her bay was overcrowded, her supplies running low, but she refused to turn anyone away. "Set up more beds in the cargo bay," she ordered. "Anyone with basic medical training, report to me immediately. We are going to save every single person we can." A young Velori was brought in, badly burned from a Kreeth attack on a refugee shelter. His glowing skin was dark and cracked. His breathing was shallow. Minji worked on him for 3 hours, using every technique she knew and some she invented on the spot. When he finally stabilized, she allowed herself a moment to breathe. Then she moved to the next patient. There was always a next patient. On the surface of Andareth, the fighting was just as fierce. The Kreeth had landed thousands of ground troops to stop the human liberation. Sergeant Lee Junho found himself in the middle of the worst of it. His squad was escorting a group of Velori refugees to an evacuation point when they were ambushed. Kreeth soldiers, huge creatures with gray skin and too many teeth, surrounded them in the ruins of a temple. "Get the civilians inside," Junho shouted to his team. "We hold them here." The Velori ran for cover, their children crying in fear. Junho and his soldiers took positions behind broken pillars and fallen walls. The Kreeth advanced, firing their weapons without mercy. Private Shin Nari found herself at the eastern entrance of the temple, alone. The rest of the squad was too far away to help. Kreeth soldiers were coming toward her, at least a dozen of them. She was 22 years old. She had never been in real combat before this mission. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding so loud she could barely think. But behind her, she could hear the Velori children. She could hear them crying for their parents. She could hear their small voices asking if they were going to be okay. Nari stopped shaking. She raised her rifle and aimed at the advancing enemy. "You want them," she said through gritted teeth. "Come and get them." She fought for 40 minutes. She used every bullet, every grenade, every trick she had ever learned. When her rifle ran out of ammunition, she used her sidearm. When that ran dry, she fought with her knife. The Kreeth bodies piled up in front of her position. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found Nari still standing. Her armor was cracked. Her face was covered in blood, some of it hers, but she was alive. And behind her, not a single Velori had been harmed. Sergeant Junho reached her first. He looked at her with amazement and pride. "Private, what you did here. I have never seen anything like it." Nari's legs finally gave out. She sat down heavily on the broken stones. "They were crying," she said simply. "Someone had to stay." The battle in orbit reached its peak on the second day. The Kreeth had pushed through the human lines and were preparing for a planetary bombardment. Their largest ships moved into position, aiming their massive weapons at the cities below. Captain Yoon Do-hun saw what was happening. His ship, the Iron Will, was badly damaged. The engines were running at half power. The weapons systems were failing. They should have retreated for repairs hours ago. But Do-hun looked at the Kreeth bombardment ships. He looked at the planet below. He made his choice. "All crew, this is the captain," he said over the intercom. His voice was calm and steady. "I am ordering all non-essential personnel to the escape pods. You have 10 minutes. Lieutenant Cha Sora, who had returned to the Iron Will after the first battle, looked at him with horror. "Captain, what are you planning?" Do-hun met her eyes. "Someone has to stop that bombardment. Our ship is the only one close enough." "You cannot," Sora whispered. "There has to be another way." "There is not." Do-hun put his hand on her shoulder. "Get to the escape pods, Lieutenant. That is an order. Lead our people home when this is over." Sora wanted to argue. She wanted to find another solution. But she saw the determination in his eyes. She knew there was nothing she could say. "Yes, sir," she said, her voice breaking. "It has been an honor." "The honor was mine." The crew evacuated. Only Do-hun and a few volunteers remained. They pointed the Iron Will directly at the Kreeth bombardment formation. The Kreeth saw them coming too late. They tried to turn their weapons, tried to defend themselves. But Do-hun did not slow down. The Iron Will accelerated to maximum speed, burning through the last of its fuel. The bombardment ships fired. 3 direct hits struck the Iron Will, tearing massive holes in its hull. Fire and death swept through its corridors. But the ship kept going. It kept flying toward its target. Do-hun's final transmission was heard by every ship in the fleet. His voice was calm, almost peaceful. "Tell my family I kept my promise. Tell them I love them." The Iron Will struck the lead bombardment ship at full speed. The explosion was visible from the planet's surface, a new sun burning in the sky for just a moment. The chain reaction destroyed 4 more Kreeth vessels. The bombardment was stopped. The planet was saved. But Captain Yoon Do-hun was gone. Admiral Jiho stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn and felt tears running down his face. He had known Do-hun for 20 years. He had watched him grow from a young officer into one of the finest captains in the fleet. "Sir," one of his officers said quietly, "we are receiving a message from Earth. Reinforcements are on the way. 90 warships led by Vice Admiral Kang Subin. They will arrive in 18 hours. Jiho wiped his eyes. They could hold for 18 hours. They had to. "All ships," he said, his voice hoarse but steady. "We hold the line for Captain Do-hun, for everyone who has fallen, for everyone we are protecting. We hold the line." And they did. Through fire and death, through pain and sacrifice, the human fleet held the line. They lost more ships. They lost more friends. But they did not break. They did not run. Because running meant failure. And failure meant that Captain Do-hun had died for nothing. That was something they would never allow. The human reinforcements arrived like a storm from the depths of space. 90 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with power and purpose. At their head was the dreadnought hammer of Saul, the largest and most powerful ship humanity had ever built. Vice Admiral Kang Subin stood on the bridge and looked at the battlefield before her. She was 50 years old, with iron-gray hair cut short and eyes that burned with cold fire. The fleet called her the Storm because wherever she went, destruction followed. "Report," she said calmly. Her tactical officer's voice was grim. "Admiral Jiho's fleet has lost 16 ships. 12 more are badly damaged. They have been holding the line for almost 3 days against overwhelming odds." Subin nodded. She had expected no less. Jiho was a good commander. His people were brave, but they needed help, and now that help had arrived. "Open a channel to the Kreeth command ship," she ordered. Her communications officer hesitated. "Admiral, are you sure? They have not responded to any of our previous messages." "They will respond to this one." Subin's voice was like ice. "Send it." The message was short and simple. "This is Vice Admiral Kang Subin of the United Earth Fleet. You have attacked an innocent world. You have killed defenseless people. You have made yourselves enemies of humanity. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. Prepare to die." On the World Crusher, Warlord Drexen received the message. He laughed, but there was uncertainty in his voice. The first human fleet had been bad enough. This new fleet was even larger, and its ships looked fresh and ready for battle. "More primitive fools," he said to his officers. "More insects to crush." But his officers exchanged nervous glances. They had seen what the first human fleet could do. They had watched their ships burn under the relentless human assault. They were not as confident as their warlord. The battle began immediately. Vice Admiral Subin did not waste time with tactics or strategy. She ordered a direct assault on the Kreeth Center, where the most powerful enemy ships were gathered. "All ships full attack," she commanded. "Break their formation, break their spirit, show them what happens when they threaten the innocent." The Hammer of Saul led the charge. Its massive weapons unleashed a storm of fire that tore through the Kreeth lines. Enemy ships exploded one after another, their wreckage spinning through the void. Admiral Jiho brought his surviving ships into the attack as well. Despite their damage, despite their exhaustion, his crews fought with renewed energy. Help had arrived. They were no longer alone. The Kreeth fleet began to crumble. Ships that had seemed invincible just days ago now fled in panic. Their formation broke apart. Their commanders screamed contradictory orders. Chaos spread through their ranks like a disease. Warlord Drexen watched in disbelief as his mighty armada was destroyed. This could not be happening. He had conquered 100 worlds. He had crushed 1,000 species. These humans were supposed to be primitives, children playing at war. "All ships concentrate fire on the human flagship," he ordered desperately. "Kill their commander, kill her now." The World Crusher and its escorts turned their weapons on the Hammer of Saul. Energy beams and missiles converged on the dreadnought from all directions. The ship shook with impact after impact. But Vice Admiral Subin did not flinch. "Return fire," she said calmly, "and tell engineering to stop being so dramatic about the shields. I have seen worse." Her crew laughed. Even in the middle of battle, even with death all around them, they laughed. Because they trusted their admiral. Because they knew she would bring them through. On the planet's surface, Major Otiho led the final push against the Kreeth ground forces. He was a tactical genius, a graduate of the Seoul Military Academy who had written textbooks on modern warfare. And now he was putting his knowledge to use. "The Kreeth communicate through a network of command hubs," he explained to his officers. "Take out the hubs and their army loses coordination. They become scattered, confused, easy to defeat." His plan was elegant and deadly. Human Special Forces teams hit all 7 Kreeth command hubs simultaneously. Explosions lit up the night across the entire continent. Within hours, the Kreeth ground army was in chaos. Sergeant Lee Junho led one of those assault teams. He and his squad fought their way through a heavily defended Kreeth base, room by room, corridor by corridor. The fighting was brutal and close. When they finally reached the command center, they found it defended by a dozen Kreeth elite guards. These were the biggest, strongest, most dangerous soldiers the enemy had. Junho did not hesitate. He raised his rifle and charged. The fight lasted only 3 minutes. When it was over, Junho stood among the fallen enemies, breathing hard. His armor was dented and cracked. His hands were covered in blood, but the mission was complete. "Command hub destroyed," he reported, moving to support evacuation operations. In orbit, the battle reached its climax. Lieutenant Cha Sora, who had survived the destruction of the Iron Will by escaping in a pod, had been given command of a fighter wing. Now she led that wing in an assault on the World Crusher itself. "Target their engines," she ordered her pilots. "We are not letting that monster escape." Her fighters swept in through the chaos of battle, dodging debris and enemy fire. They struck the World Crusher's engines with precision, disabling them one by one. The massive ship slowed, then stopped, dead in space. Vice Admiral Subin saw her opportunity. "All ships target the enemy flagship. Disable but do not destroy. I want that ship intact." The human fleet converged on the World Crusher. Its defenses were overwhelmed. Its weapons were silenced. Within an hour, the ship was powerless and surrounded. "Prepare boarding parties," Subin ordered. "We are going to capture that vessel and its commander." The boarding was led by the most experienced Marines in the fleet. They cut through the hull and stormed into the ship, fighting through every corridor. The Kreeth crew fought hard, but they were outmatched. Sergeant Lee Junho was among the Marines who reached the throne room. There, sitting on a massive chair carved from the bones of conquered species, was Warlord Drexen the Unbroken. His elite guards surrounded him, weapons ready, but they were outnumbered and they knew it. Drexen looked at the humans with hatred in his eyes. "Why?" he demanded. "Why did you come here? Why did you fight for these pathetic creatures? The Velori are nothing. They have nothing. They are too weak to even defend themselves." Junho stepped forward. He was tired, he was wounded, he had lost friends in this battle, but his voice was steady. "Because they asked," he said simply. Drexen stared at him. "That is it. That is all. They asked and you threw yourselves into war. You sacrificed ships and soldiers for strangers. You are insane. You are all insane." "Maybe," Junho agreed, "but we are also here and you are defeated. That is all that matters." The elite guards looked at each other. Then, one by one, they lowered their weapons. They had seen enough. They had lost enough. Their warlord had led them to destruction, and they would follow him no further. Drexen was taken prisoner. He did not go quietly. He screamed and cursed and promised revenge. But his threats meant nothing now. His fleet was destroyed. His army was scattered. His empire had suffered a defeat it would never recover from. Vice Admiral Subin accepted his surrender personally. She looked at the warlord with cold contempt. "You thought the Velori were weak because they did not fight," she said. "You thought that made them easy prey, but you forgot something important." "What?" Drexen snarled. "You forgot that the weak have friends." Subin turned her back on him. "Take him away. He will face justice for his crimes." As the Kreeth warlord was led to his cell, the human fleet began the long work of recovery. Ships were repaired. Wounded were treated. The dead were counted and honored. On the surface of Andareth, the Velori emerged from their hiding places. They looked up at the sky, where human ships now protected them instead of Kreeth vessels threatening them. They wept with relief and joy. A young Velori child ran up to Sergeant Lee Junho as he walked through the ruined capital. She was the same child he had spoken to days ago, the one with blue skin and starlight eyes. "You did it," she said. "You kept your promise." Junho knelt down and smiled at her. "Yes, we did." "What happens now?" she asked. Junho looked around at the devastation. There was so much to rebuild, so many wounds to heal, It would take years, maybe decades. But they would do it, humans and Valori together, because that was what friends did. Now, he said, we start making things better. 6 months passed since the Battle of Andareth. The fires were out, the rubble was being cleared, and slowly, carefully, the Valori were rebuilding their world. Humans helped them every step of the way. Engineers came to design new buildings. Doctors came to heal the wounded. Teachers came to comfort the children. What had begun as a military mission had become something more, something deeper. It had become a partnership. Admiral Park Ji-ho stood on a hill overlooking the capital city. Below him, construction machines hummed and workers moved through the streets. New structures rose where old ones had fallen. Life was returning to Andareth. Fleet Commander Kim Hana stood beside him. She had traveled from Earth to see the progress with her own eyes. She was old now, her hair pure white, but her spirit was as strong as ever. "You did good work here," she said quietly, "all of you." Jiho shook his head. "Many good people died, Captain Dohun, thousands of others. Sometimes I wonder if it was worth it." Hana looked at him with kind eyes. "Look down there. Look at those children playing in the street. They are alive because of what we did. Their parents are alive. Their grandparents are alive. An entire species still exists because humanity chose to help." She put her hand on his arm. "That is always worth it, always." The ceremony was held at sunset. The Velori had built a memorial garden on the site of their oldest temple. In this garden, they planted a tree for every human who had fallen in their defense. Thousands of trees, each one glowing with soft inner light, arranged in perfect circles. Humans and Velori gathered together for the dedication. Admiral Jiho stood at the front, along with Vice Admiral Kang Subin, Major Otiho, Medical Officer Han Minji, Chief Engineer Beek Yuri, and all the other commanders who had fought in the battle. Sergeant Lee Junho was there too, with the surviving members of his squad. Private Shin Nari stood beside him, wearing her new rank insignia. She had been promoted to corporal after her heroics at the temple. The Velori elder who spoke at the ceremony had difficulty with standard language, but her meaning was clear. She told the story of how her people had called for help, expecting nothing. She told how the darkness had seemed absolute, how hope had died in their hearts. "And then," she said, her voice shaking with emotion, "you came, strangers from across the stars, beings we had never met. You did not know us. You had no reason to care about us. But you came anyway, you bled for us, you died for us, you saved us." She looked out at the gathered humans, tears flowing down her glowing face. "We Velori have no words strong enough to thank you. We have no gifts valuable enough to repay you. All we can offer is this garden and a promise. For as long as our species exists, we will remember. We will teach our children about the humans who answered our cry. We will sing songs about your bravery. Your names will live in our hearts forever." The Velori began to sing. It was a song without words, a melody of pure emotion that seemed to fill the air with warmth and gratitude. Humans who had fought in terrible battles felt tears running down their faces. Something in that song touched the deepest parts of their souls. When the song ended, the Velori elder approached the humans one by one. She touched each person's forehead with her long, delicate fingers. In Velori culture, this was the highest honor, a blessing reserved for the most sacred occasions. Private Shin Nari, now Corporal Nari, received a special recognition. Vice Admiral Kang Subin herself pinned the Star of Earth on her chest, the highest military honor humanity could bestow. "For extraordinary courage in the face of overwhelming odds," Subin announced. "For holding the line alone to protect those who could not protect themselves. Corporal Shin Nari represents the best of what humanity can be." Nari stood at attention, trying not to cry. She was 22 years old. 6 months ago, she had been a frightened private on her first mission. Now she was a decorated hero. But when she looked at the Velori children watching the ceremony, She did not feel like a hero. She felt like someone who had simply done what needed to be done. That night, there was a celebration. Humans and Velori shared food and music and stories. Barriers of language and culture melted away as people laughed and danced together under the stars. Sergeant Lee Junho found himself sitting with the young Velori child he had befriended during the battle. Her name was Lyra, and she had adopted him as a sort of honorary uncle. "Will you stay here forever?" she asked hopefully. Junho smiled sadly. "I cannot stay forever. My home is very far away, but I will visit as often as I can, and there will always be humans here to protect you." Lyra leaned against his arm. "I want to be like you when I grow up. I want to help people who are scared." "You can do that without fighting," Junho told her. "You can be a doctor or a teacher or an artist. There are many ways to help people." "I know," Lyra said, "but I also want to be brave like you." Junho thought about that. He had not felt brave during the battle. He had felt scared and desperate and overwhelmed, but he had kept going anyway. Maybe that was what bravery really meant. "You are already brave," he said. "Surviving what you survived, coming out of hiding to trust strangers, hopping when everything seemed hopeless. That takes courage, little one. Never forget that." The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy. Other species watched the recordings of the battle with amazement and fear. These humans, these primitives from a small planet in an unremarkable system, had defeated one of the most powerful empires in known space. The elder races, who had looked down on humanity for so long, suddenly saw them differently. The Velori had called for help, and humanity had answered with fire and fury. The Kreeth Dominion, which had terrorized 100 worlds, had been broken by human determination. This was not a species to ignore. This was not a species to underestimate. The United Earth Council understood the weight of this moment. They knew that their actions would define humanity's role in the galaxy for generations to come. So they crafted a message and broadcast it on every channel, in every language, to every corner of known space. Fleet Commander Kim Hana delivered the message personally. She stood in the Great Hall in Geneva, surrounded by the flags of a united Earth, and spoke words that would echo through history. "To all who cry out in the darkness," she began, "to all who suffer under tyranny, to all who have no one left to call, know this, you are not alone." Her voice grew stronger. "Humanity hears you. We may be young, we may be strange. We may do things that other species do not understand, but we know what it means to suffer, we know what it means to fight for survival, and we know what it means to hope." She looked directly into the camera, as if speaking to every being in the galaxy personally. "If you are in trouble, call for us. If you are being oppressed, reach out to us. If you are facing extinction at the hands of tyrants, send us your coordinates." Her final words rang with absolute conviction. "We will come, not with empty words but with fire, not with hesitation but with fury, not with conditions but with open hearts. Call for us. We will answer, every single time." The broadcast ended. Silence fell across the galaxy as countless species processed what they had just heard. Some species were afraid. Humanity was powerful and unpredictable. What if they decided to turn that power toward conquest? What if their protection came with a price? But other species felt something they had not felt in centuries. They felt hope. For too long, the galaxy had been ruled by the strong who preyed on the weak. For too long, empires like the Kreeth had done whatever they wanted, knowing no one would stop them. Now there was someone who would stop them. Now there was a species crazy enough, brave enough, compassionate enough to fight for strangers. The stars had many predators, many dangers, many dark corners where terrible things happened to innocent people. But now the stars had a guardian too. A guardian with technology and weapons and soldiers. A guardian with ships that charged into battle without fear. A guardian with engineers who could repair anything, doctors who could heal anyone, soldiers who would hold the line against any odds. The Velori children planted the last tree in the memorial garden. They watered it carefully, singing soft songs of growth and life. Above them, human warships patrolled the skies, their crews watching for any sign of danger. The child named Lyra looked up at those ships and smiled. She was not afraid anymore. She knew that if darkness ever came again, she only had to call. And humanity would answer. With fire and fury. Every single time.